You are watching NovaNow.tv, independent community media for Northern Virginia.
Save my normal lengthy monologue here and really just jump right into this conversation with my very special guest tonight, brave lady Debra Tisler, coming to us from Fairfax, who is going to fill us in on the details as she can talk about them and get us caught up on the legal front. This story goes deep and wide, and who knows how long it may go on. Our hope here is that cooler heads prevail and everything comes out that needs to come out and justice be served. We're going to talk tonight with a very brave lady who's going head to head with one of the largest school districts in this country. Debra Tisler coming on tonight to talk with us and to inform you, our audience on NovaNow.tv, about the case in general. What she can talk about, she will share with us and get us caught up on the legal front. Debra, thank you so much for joining us on NovaNow.tv. We really appreciate what you are doing and coming on here and sharing your story with our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it was great. I always try to do a pre-interview with my guests, and Debra and I spent a good hour talking on the phone one day last week, and shared with her my experiences as a teacher and working within the public sector for quite some time, and we had a blunt conversation about what has happened and the impact that this has had on her and her family and her partner's family as well in this Cali. So I know this has to be incredibly stressful, and I am looking forward to sharing this story, as I said in the intro, as much as we possibly can. Debra, before we get into all of this, tell us a little bit about you and really what got you concerned and opening up this can of worms in the first place.
Well, as a member of the community and also as a person that also has a background in special education, my concerns seem to have fused and with other members of the community, and noticing that they also were experiencing many of the similar challenges that I was, as far as dealing with Fairfax County Public Schools for my own children, and some of the concerns that, I've had just as a professional, as a special educator myself. And so, that discussion, of course, with that community, just expanded as I had these discussions. More issues came up, and it made me think, connecting the dots on some of the pieces, specifically around, we have this enormous budget, yet we have these abysmal literacy and math scores, and they just didn't appear during COVID. They have been on the decline for quite some time. And the allocation of funding for literacy and for these specific types of specialized instruction and interventions, as well as enrichment for our students, it didn't appear to myself and to other community members that it was there. And, COVID really brought light to it.
When you read the story and you look at how this has transpired and how aggressive they are being with you, you got to wonder, what is this pointing to? And what don't they want to get out to the public? And I'm certainly not making any accusations. I don't know, but it's definitely interesting to see how they're coming after you so hard. And you guys have made several claims that this really, their attempts to silence you is really tantamount to censorship. You say that you have a First Amendment right to speak out about this, but they seem to be, and their argument being that you have information that they admit they gave to you mistakenly, but that it contains private and confidential information, and that when asked, it was not returned, and that you guys, they're alleging you didn't play nice and you just threw it out there to the community. So a lot to unpack here. Why don't you go ahead and give us the thumbnail sketch? And folks, we're going to point you to Callie's blog. There's so much here, and you can spend a lot of time researching this and reading the articles that have already been reported on all of this. So give us this thumbnail sketch to catch people up that may not be familiar with the story. You issued this FOIA request because of your concerns. Your partner, Callie, she should be an investigative reporter herself. She's done an amazing job detailing this. Tell us in summary how we got to where we are, please.
So, basically, like I said before, Callie and I, we had concerns. We had similar concerns. I thought, I'll put in a FOIA request here for these documents, for these legal invoices, to look at the costs and expenditures that were being, paid out for outsourced counsel. I did that all legally. I went through the proper channels. They provided links to me in the email with the links to the documents. It stated that basically, these have been redacted and that it's been all done in accordance to Virginia regulations. And so, I don't know exactly what they want me to give back since they sent them to me via link. So their letters didn't even make sense, and neither does their suit and their complaint.
So in Callie's blog post, she noted in there that the FCPS board told reporters that you folks had published private information about other people's kids. Now you all are alleging, and you're saying that's not the case.
Well, right. Well, and it's interesting that, that's what they put out in their media release, but I don't believe that they put that in their complaint exactly. But, what Callie did put out there, she went through her own, time and efforts. And I as well. We looked at those documents and she took out and redacted what they should have done. So what was put on her post was not, wasn't revealing of any confidential information as far as students, personally identifiable information.
Right. In their complaint, in their legal complaint, they did accuse you folks of publishing private information, but they didn't cite specific examples at all. There wasn't anything in there. I went through, not that I saw anyway. I found this very interesting. They did admit that the records, and folks understand too, we're looking at a dump of documents here that was huge, almost 1,500 pages that were delivered after Debra issued a legal FOIA request, paid for it, did everything correctly, and they were delivered to her electronically via what was it? I have a question about this. Was it delivered to you? It was delivered to you via Dropbox. Was it a secure Dropbox? Was there a password issued that you would have had to have type in, or did you just follow the link and the folder opened right up for you?
I just followed the link.
That brings up, as an IT guy, I'm putting my hat on here. That brings up another concern. And I think it's rather interesting, especially in light of, we talk about other issues regarding FCPS and data breaches and whatnot. It strikes me, number one, again, I'm no legal analyst here, but they admitted right in their complaint that they mistakenly gave you these documents. And then one has to ask, it begs the question, who made that error with 1,500 plus documents? Is anybody being held accountable for releasing unredacted documents that did not go through legal review, according to their complaint? And then sent over an unsecured email link.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to hold us, to the fire for what they didn't do. That's exactly it. And that's definitely a problem, especially since they're paying the same legal group that looks like should have been doing some of that work for them. So to sue us and to harass us.
So the legal firm that is now coming after you would have been the same firm that should have given these documents to review. Is that what you're saying? I'm not familiar with the process. So again, I'm really being careful with my words here, because I don't want to make accusations here. I'm just trying to unplug and unpack what we're seeing. And I have a breakdown here that we can get into. But at one point in their document, let me see here. I have my notes in front of me. It says right here, well, let's break this down. According to points 12 and 13 in their factual allegations, in their complaint, they dropped about 1,000 documents in a folder in the Dropbox platform, which is a file sharing platform that anybody can set up an account for. September 10th, this happened. They emailed you. That's the link that you're referring to. Mm-hmm. And the board personnel, whoever it was, emailed you, and they're saying in their complaint that they told you in that email that they are still reviewing the documents, and that some of this stuff was not redacted. They're saying that they made you aware of that on the 10th.
I don't recall specifically offhand right now, but I do know that the emails that I received with the links stated that the documents were, good to go, that they were redacted and in accordance to Virginia regulations. And they even went so far as to have labeled those files as redacted. So they came to me, the files were labeled redacted,
but they weren't redacted. So somebody just basically somebody made an error. Is what it looks like. And then and this is, folks, I'm reading to you from their legal brief, by the way, or from their complaint. Again, on September 13th, board personnel then followed up and placed a second batch that was consisting of over 300 documents. So at this point, we're almost up to 1,500 documents. On September 14th, apparently, according to their own legal complaint, they discovered the mistake, not only in as much as the documents were not fully reviewed or properly redacted, as Debra's pointing out, but that they had actually been provided under FOIA without what they say in their complaint, a second level review by their own counsel. So that's what you were referring to, saying that the counsel that is being referred to in that complaint would have been, or is, the same counsel that is now been contracted by the school district to come after you legally, to stop you and to seek damages if possible.
Well, I don't even know if they are contracted or not. That's something that we've never been able to locate. We haven't been able to obtain a retainer, an official retainer with any of these law firms, or a contract that they have to abide by with the county. It just seems as if they submit in invoices and they get paid. I believe a request via FOIA was at one point put in for the retainers and contracts for these law firms, and we were told there's no records responsive to our request. So we're not even sure under what conditions these law firms operate under with Fairfax County Public Schools.
What the relationship is. So this law firm that is filing the suit, are they the law firm of record of this public school district?
I don't know where they are listed in official capacity, whereby the school board has actually voted that they, procure services under an official contract or not. I have not seen that. All I have seen is that these invoices go in for exorbitant amounts of money and they get paid right away, or within a good amount of time, to the tune of I think it was almost $8 million or something around there in a fiscal year. So it's concerning how they came about to be the law firm that came after us specifically, and what exactly in those invoices, attached that law firm to us. That's something that needs to be, I think, explored possibly, as to what their rationale is. As far as the redactions are concerned, there are specifics under Virginia regulations for redactions. They have not provided a redaction log, which they should do. And that's my understanding. And I don't even know, what exactly should have been redacted, right? They've not stated that in a redaction log that, on X page, this should be redacted. Or, this is why we are redacting it now.
Sure.
They have not been transparent in that process either.
So according to the district, I mean, the bottom line is they are taking the position here that you guys are the ones that have run afoul of the legal process, and that you are in possession of information that you have no legal right to possess, information that they gave to you, mind you, albeit mistakenly.
Right, and that I paid for.
And that you paid for.
And that I legally obtained.
And that you legally obtained.
Exactly. So I really, other than just wanting to bully us, which is part of what's called the retaliation triangle for parents that have been in situations where they've needed to advocate for their child to the schools, there is something called the retaliation triangle that a legal advocate by the name of Pete Wright put out there, where, it goes to the third level with the law firms, where they will come and they basically, like I said, they bully, they try to intimidate you. There's, making you out to be the villain, discredit you, gaslight you. I mean, you could be sitting there straight at a meeting with representatives from the school district with the document in front of you, and they'll still act like they don't know what you're talking about, as if you're making that up. I mean, so many parents have gone through this that we all can't be telling the same lie. It's obviously true what's happening. And unfortunately, they're being trained to behave this way by the very, we believe, by the very law firms that are coming after us to silence us. And now it's escalated up the chain all the way to the federal government because, parents have lifted up the rock. COVID brought school into the homes. And parents saw what was going on, a $3.6 billion expenditure here in a budget, and there's no return here. The parents are providing the services. The parents are doing what the school system is supposed to be doing. And, it's the masses have awoken themselves here. They've waken up and they're looking into this, and the school boards are becoming very desperate, and that's why they've now have, Attorney General Garland after us, trying to intimidate us again, gaslighting us, telling us you're now a domestic terrorist because you're speaking up. It's all part of that, I believe, in many retaliation triangle.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if you've seen the reports that we've been putting out over the past few weeks covering these school board meetings, it's getting more and more disconcerting, this drumbeat of trying to silence people for, as you say, for simply for speaking up. And of course, they're painting the individuals that are speaking up and have legitimate unresolved grievances, mind you. They're folks that are frustrated, and they're pushing back, and the powers that be don't seem to like that. And as you point out rightly, this move to bring down the full weight of the federal government on those that are daring to stand up to local school board officials is frankly just absolute madness. And I'm glad to see that there's a lot of pushback about this. Actually, I saw the Virginia state school board association issued a letter the other day getting into this, saying, what the heck is this all about? Nobody approached us when the National School Boards Association wrote this letter to Biden, and they're disavowing it, saying they didn't subscribe to this. They don't sign on to it. And they acknowledge there are issues with people getting a bit out of hand. But it's getting downright creepy. In terms of their claims, and I know, you all have legal counsel through the Goldwater Institute that is helping you with this, and they have a couple briefs, I would say, up on their website talking about this and their stance on it that didn't get into a lot of detail. But the bottom line is, here's the crux of it. However we got here, the school district is saying the information was confidential and should be protected under law. And to use their word, in the interest of equity, you should not be allowed to retain it or disseminate it. One of the things I thought was interesting in their relief, they were asking the judge to order you to not only give back the documents that they gave you. They weren't hard documents. I don't know how you give back electronic documents and prove that that's the only copy that you have. Like how is that even possible? And then secondly, you're to provide a list of all the people that you may have released this to?
Exactly. If they spent 1/10 of the amount of time that they take to attack parents and to avoid being transparent, they might actually be able to do something about their own internal audit that calls them out for being problematic on the fidelity of implementation as a school board. So right now on their board docs, there's a document stating exactly that. It's called the Fidelity of Implementation of our Fairfax County Public Schools School Board. They have no centralized way of tracking their motions. If they're even successful, how much money is being spent? There is such a disconnect between the school board and the central office that no one knows what's going on. It's like Abbott and Costello. Who's on first and what's on second? And then they turn around and they pretend like our rights are like a Burger King menu, that they can just go along and say, we don't like, Debra Tisler and Kelly Ottinger figuring things out because we're not transparent here. We're just going to go ahead and be bullies. I mean, why don't they put that effort instead of bullying us? Why don't they come ask us what our thoughts are? Why don't they be proactive and say, what do you see as parents? No, instead they fight us. They continue to be, hostile. And again, put that effort into what your own auditor says about you. Why don't you figure out where the money is going? Why don't you figure out why your scores are abysmal? Why don't you figure out why they're teaching about how to read the anatomy of genitalia, but they cannot figure out how to teach kids the, basic structure of words, about how to, your sounds to your vowels or your consonants, how to write, some of these basic things that they should be doing. Instead, like I said, they try to come after us and bully us because we dare to question, hey, why aren't you teaching our children the vowel sounds? Why aren't you teaching them the structure of the English language? Why aren't you teaching them how to communicate effectively in both written and oral language? No. Instead, they're going to spend their time chasing us down, harassing us, and trying to silence us. And it comes down to, I feel, it's just desperate actions by a desperate school board that, realizes now the curtain's up, and what else can they do in order to get their agenda forward?
I want to get into that a little bit here. But before we do that, I'm going to challenge you on something. And this is serious, Debra. I think you're wrong about something, and I'm going to go ahead and call you out on it here. Is that all right?
Sure.
You used the Burger King analogy. You were wrong. At Burger King, you had it your way, remember? All right. So that said, let's talk a little bit about this has been going on for quite some time. And as Callie mentions in her blog, she gets on various issues, HIPAA failures over the past years, stolen credentials, data breaches, negotiations to extend Dr. Brabrand's contract, the investigations into cyber hacking, Blackboard failures, the whole virtual fiasco, wasting of funds, and much, much more. I want you to break down what was the rabbit trail that you were going down in the first place. You made reference to wanting to you FOIA'd receipts, but what was it you were looking for, and how did this tie into the special education services? Can you get into that a little bit more so people understand? I know you can't get into the detail of what you were found because now you got this gag order and you can't share with us what you found, but what was it that you were suspecting that caused you to put that out there?
Well, we had noticed that only about, I think, $26 per student in special education and $13 per student in general education was spent through, the COVID relief funds. And then we had noticed, just talking to other community members in our own experience, that the overreach of outsourced counsel, which we had no confirmation if there was ever a formal contract or, retainer. Mm-hmm.
Let me stop you there. Let's take one thing at a time. Let's go back to the special education because you work and forgive me, but you worked in special education. You know what that means. Your average viewer out there watching may not $13 per kid. What is she talking about? Explain to us why these numbers were concerning to you. What should we have seen, or what should you have seen, and what was it you were looking at that raised that red flag initially? How is special education supposed to work, and what did you think was showing that it wasn't working correctly?
Well, overall, the majority of the community members that we had spoken to and we had seen on social media were all saying the same thing, that their children were not receiving the services that they should have been receiving. And those are direct services. So that is, a special instruction being received by a teacher that is trained in special education, delivering those services to the child. That could be also the related services such as speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy, vision impairment teacher, and that specially designed instruction. So overall, the parents were not seeing that happen.
So these are children that had IEPs, specialized instruction that the school district had a legal obligation to provide. And you and other folks were coming out in the community saying they're not providing what they're supposed to do under law. So you decided to look into it a little bit more.
Correct. That, as well as parents then noticed that when they would start to question why they weren't receiving those services, it seemed to have gone up the chain through, their more legal side of the county, which is called due process and eligibility. Mm-hmm. And then they were noticing that, outsourced counsel were becoming more involved in their children's cases, specifically in what's called staffing or the writing of their child's IEP. So, lawyers are not educators. So why are lawyers involved with the writing or being involved in, the development of a child's IEP behind closed doors without the parent?
What? I'm sorry. I'm kind of speechless at what you just said. I was an educator for 13 years. And have many rounds with, I wasn't in special education, but I as a teacher, we're held to understand the process and the differentiation that is necessary to serve these children. We worked with special education department to make sure that the services were rendered. We had to document everything. Never in my 13 years did I ever have to sit down with a suit and who told me how things were supposed to be in my classroom, or told a special education teacher how things were supposed to be in terms of the IEP. What are you talking about? What did you can you get specific here? I mean, are you allowed to get specific here and illustrate to us what that looked like? I mean, were lawyers actually responding to parents, or what? Explain to us the details there of that allegation, if you would, please.
Well, I guess, I can tell you specifically for my situation, lawyers were telling the staff and the administrators, including the teachers, that they had to blind copy them on all communications with me and my family, as well as my son, my children. And then
the lawyers dictated to the teachers, you're saying, to the school administrators
and the administration, that they needed to be blind copied.
And you have documentation of this? I mean, is that not a breach of confidentiality? Why would these attorneys be in that loop? Do they have a right to that information?
Well, they assert that they are school officials. Even though they don't have an official contract that we have seen. If there's one, we've not seen it. There's no retainer. We have not seen it. So they act in the capacity, they say, as school officials. Therefore, they have the right to tell administrators and your teachers that they are to be blind copied on all the communications.
They assert that they, a contracted legal firm, are school officials.
Yes.
I've never heard. What's your attorney think about all this? I can't. I mean, I know that. I mean, look, I get it. This is all pending, and there's only so much that we can share, that you can share with the public here. I understand that, but this sounds over the top, unbelievable. I can't even believe what I'm hearing. How's that?
Well, that's the level of retaliation. I mean, emails as benign as, my child emailing in, hey, I can't log in today. I'm having a hard time. I mean, emails like that. I mean, there's nothing out of the ordinary, just basic student teacher emails. And they also were compiling emails about my other children as well.
Would you care to elaborate any more on that?
Just that they were very intrusive and for whatever reason, wanting to know, again, basic benign information about, college, who's coming to visit, for a college visit day at the school, just information back and forth to the guidance counselors surrounding that. My son trying to log in and log out, or talking to his teacher about an assignment.
Just day-to-day operations.
Yeah. My emails as well, or my husband.
So when you said that they wanted to be kept in the loop there, so to speak, and that how was that present? Okay. How was that presented to you? Did the administration, did a teacher say, did you just one day start noticing email from a law firm in a CC field? Like, how was that presented to you?
I didn't know about it. And it had been going on, I believe, for almost a year. I didn't know. And I had filed a state complaint type, like a process in special education. And I received the documents through what's, under FERPA. And that's where I discovered all of the blind copied emails to the attorneys.
Did you bring that up very specifically to the school district and ask them, why, number one, what right they have to that information, and what about the breach of confidentiality? Did you bring that up?
I did bring that up.
And what was the response?
And I was told that they are considered school officials, and it's permissible for them to, do that. The school board, none of the school board members that I emailed ever responded back to me about it.
Who did then? You're saying that you got a response saying that they were considered school officials. Who told you that?
The attorney.
The attorney that. So you put in a request saying, what the hell's going on here? And they turned, you were probably more polite than I would have been. I don't know, though. You got pretty feisty on the phone the other day. So, so you asked, and the response that you got was not from the school, but from the attorneys.
Yes. Through a conversation. Yes. It was that they are school officials.
Wow.
And so, they're attending what's called, like I said, the bridges out even into, the staffing meetings. I don't know if you're familiar what a staffing is. So prior to an IEP meeting, staff get together, the specialists and the teachers will get together to draft the IEP.
Yeah, I've sat in dozens of those over the years. They right. Here's the needs. How are you going to accommodate them? You have to list the accommodations. You have to say what's practical, what's not practical, what is a reasonable accommodation, what isn't. Yeah, absolutely. And then how you're going to differentiate that child from others that may not have the same needs. So, okay. So those staffing was going meetings, to that as well. The attorneys were at the meetings? They were involved in that?
That's what it looks like according to the documentation for my child. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is where your concern. Okay, I appreciate your patience because this is a web. And now I'm seeing where the red flag went off, and you went, wait a minute. First off, what's going on here? Secondly, you've got cooks in the kitchen that you suspect shouldn't be in the kitchen that aren't cooks, and they're being paid handsomely to be there. Ding, ding, ding.
Correct. They are.
I'm assuming that they were being paid for every meeting that they were going to. I'm assuming, again, I'm not making any accusations because what do I know? I'm just a media guy. But I don't think lawyers return emails and sit in meetings for free. I'm just saying.
No. And so why isn't this money going towards, direct services for the students? And why do we have staff? Why do we have administrators there and people from due process and eligibility are attending the meetings? That's their job. And we also have contracted division counsel. So why are we paying for administrators, due process and eligibility, upper administration? Some of them are called, procedural support liaisons. And why do we have division counsel already contracted? All those layers, and now we need another layer of outsourced counsel involved at, just speaking from the documents I saw for my own child. Over time, previous to this FOIA, it was about $245 an hour for the one firm.
It's interesting that in their own complaint against you, where they admit that this mistake was done and they admit that the documents were given to you without the second tier legal review, which we're assuming should have been these same bank of lawyers. I would think if these were the lawyers that were representing and sitting in on all these things, maybe, as you're saying, if they've been focusing on doing their job, which was to review the documents and to properly redact them before they went out to you, rather than inserting themselves in special education meetings, we wouldn't be in this mess. I'm just saying.
It's all about, it's billable hours. That's what we, the parents in special education a lot of hostility is created that's unnecessary. And it's, it's billable hours. When you've got firms making millions of dollars a year off of special education matters that can be easily resolved. And there are free resources out there. There are nonprofit organizations that specialize in dispute resolutions between school systems and parents. Why aren't we using them? I've brought them up. I've asked for resources to be implemented. We're not asking for, anything grand. We're just asking for what IDEA, the spirit of IDEA, and what the regulations state as parents.
I'll tell you, my jaw literally just dropped open when you told me that, because none of that makes sense. And you know what? Again, I'm going to say, I'm a media guy. I'm not a lawyer. All right. I'm not a state legislator. Maybe it's legal what they're doing. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Fine. It'll all come out when this all goes to court. Now, that all said, you have to ask the question, if a school's purpose is to provide the best available appropriate education to the child as is possible, just the complexity of inserting this legal element into these very personal, what are supposed to be private relationships, let alone the legal and or I should say financial ramifications of such a relationship, you have to say, is the administration and those that are charged with providing these services really truly looking out for the student's best interest? I mean, that's just a next step common sense question, I guess you could ask.
Well, based on the trainings that Kelly and I have reviewed, and based on the information that our administrators are trained to use, it's mostly lawyers that are making these trainings up and telling administrators and teachers, what to do. I mean, for example, there was a book in the Parent-Teacher Resource Center. It's basically how to write legally compliant IEPs. It shouldn't be about legally compliant IEPs per se. It's supposed to be about what is needed for the child, what is required for the child, right? And to meet their unique disability-based needs, not what an attorney feels should be written in an IEP.
Well, to play devil's advocate here, I can understand to a point, because I've sat through many trainings as a teacher where we were schooled in the law, and they want to make sure, the districts want to make sure that they don't end up getting sued because the teacher makes a mistake. So I can understand that to a point, but this level of involvement I've never heard of in my life. And I'll tell you what, I'll put this out there to our audience. We have folks from all over the world that watch this show. People, if you've ever heard anything like this, if you work in education, if you've ever worked in special education, law firms getting blind copies of emails between parents, guidance counselors, students, lawyers involving themselves in IEP meetings, staffing meetings. I've never heard of such a thing. And again, I don't know. Maybe it was just the world that I lived in and where I worked that I didn't experience this, and that it's perfectly normal. It just sounds incredibly obtrusive to me. And I think, we can go back to your mention about Merrick Garland and what we're seeing happening with the painting of those that are expressing concerns at these school board meetings as, dangerous crackpot zealots that are a danger to society and to the educational process and the educators themselves. It's very disconcerting. And then you put that together with somebody at the last meeting that I covered at FCPS brought up in the school board meeting several times, and they challenged the school board. They said, you need to challenge this. You need to write a resolution that condemns this. And you're not, and they're silent about it. And I haven't heard any response from them, from the folks that were demanding this, but they were pointing out the simple fact that FCPS is also apparently, I don't know if they've signed the contract or if they are going to, but that there is some relationship between this Paragon Systems that Merrick Garland's son-in-law is involved with, which does what? Provides the software to school districts around the country where students are providing what is it they call a social emotional learning, or the SEL stuff, right? And are polling the students and getting inside their head and who they are and where their families are coming from. Now, I might be speaking out of turn here because I haven't seen the actual polls and I haven't seen the questions that are being asked yet, but it strikes me as incredibly convenient that Garland's family is going to stand to benefit mightily to ungodly amounts of money from parents standing down, being put in their place, and effectively being shut up because of this chilling effect, right? So you gotta wonder, and again, I will say, I'm just the guy that's curious. Mm-hmm. Why is a school district's law firm involving themselves and inserting themselves in these what should be private emails? I remember when I was a teacher, I couldn't even include an aunt in an email chain unless we had prior authorization to do so. We were not allowed to share information with other teachers that weren't in the loop. How is it that a law firm was receiving blind, not just copies, but blind copies that you weren't even aware of about your kid, and who else knows who else's child out there? And you got to sit there and you got to look and you got to say, man, in this Orwellian world that we are living in, again, what the bleep is going on here? This is mind-boggling. Did you hear from other parents that have experienced similar situations?
Well, I told him to make sure that you put in your FERPA requests, that you get the opportunity to inspect and review the education record. And, specifically FOIA emails regarding personally identifiable to you and your children that have blind copies to them. It's not easy to get this information because when you put in your FOIA or FERPA requests and you've been flagged as a family as one that questions, the lawyers review it. So, considering the fact that Fairfax County Public Schools was sanctioned in the past by a federal judge in a case for, I believe it had something to do with destroying the evidence or not producing evidence or documentation, it just brings you into a whole other level of questioning as to who actually has their hands on your child's personally identifiable information and how are they monitoring this? I mean, clearly with the FOIA that they gave me, they're not. And, this isn't the first rodeo where Fairfax County Public Schools has been called out for breaches.
Oh, sure.
Because, Cali has done that over and over again. It's definitely, it's very concerning about that.
No kidding. I have to ask this question. I really do. And I'm sure others are as well. You know, I read their documentation in terms of they detailed in great detail how many times they called you, letters that were sent. They even said that they tried approaching you at your home, I believe. And gave times and details. And I have to ask, when they did start coming to you and asking you to return the documentation, why did you go public with it rather than answering their calls and saying, okay, I get it, it was a mistake, and here's your stuff back, and keep it quiet? Why did you guys take the tact and the road that you did?
Well, we have our fundamental rights here in the United States of America. We have freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Mm-hmm. What I received from them, it stated in the email that everything had been redacted according to Virginia regulations. The files themselves were labeled as redacted. It led to questioning just from what we had reviewed that it was more of not about possibly the students. I'm unsure as to what their thinking is. I can speculate over and over again as to why they took the road that they did. I do know that it was very hostile and it was very, it was very intense what they did.
You've used the word harassment several times, actually. Explain to us what you and your family and Callie's family went through during these weeks that they were vigorously, shall we say, trying to get their information back. Tell us what that was like. What was life like during that time?
It wasn't even like their information back because they had already given it to me.
Well, I'm being kind,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what'd you have to endure?
Oh, they were coming to our house without notice that someone was coming. They did it through the weekend. The same repetitive letter. Didn't even give us time to even seek our own legal counsel for advisement on this. They were just complete bullying tactics, and maybe hoping that we wouldn't get legal counsel to figure out what our rights are specifically.
So did you pursue, I mean, somebody's calling you and showing up at your house unwanted, and you express to them that you're making contact with me that is unwanted and I'm considering this harassment, you can call the police and file a complaint. Did you follow up with any sort of legal complaint against them?
Callie and I both did. I think the final straw was when, one of their cars came to my home and was sitting at the bottom of my property on the street.
It's like an episode of The Sopranos.
Just sitting there. Just sitting there.
Seriously. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Just sitting there.
You told me
I couldn't go out.
You told me a story of a letter and duct tape.
Oh, Callie had, I think, a letter duct taped to the front of her door from them.
So complete strangers just showing up at your door. Were you making any contact with them? Were they knocking? You refused to answer? I mean, did you ever have any conversations with any of these folks?
They were knocking, knocking, ringing the doorbell. Sometimes they just go sit outside in their car and wait to see if we would come to the door.
Wow.
One of the people looked like one of the attorneys to me. I reported all this information. I don't know. There's this gray Lexus SUV that likes to come to our houses.
So you said you did you actually call the police and file a complaint?
We did. We had to. We were getting really concerned about our safety.
No kidding. What was the police's response?
I believe that they followed all their necessary procedures. And they told us that if it continues, to please call back, to follow up with them, to call immediately, and reference, our reports, and that they're still coming. So, they followed up with their procedures that they needed to do.
Oh, good.
And I made them aware that I couldn't even go for a walk.
Did the harassment stop?
Outside. It subsided somewhat once we, were able to get some legal counsel, some help.
Okay.
But
now, was that after they launched their lawsuit, or their pending action asking for that injunctive relief? So the harassment continued after that, or the alleged harassment, I should say, just to be fair.
Well, they did make a delivery to my home at one point, and they didn't give me any notice that they were coming. So, when they did that, it was hard. It was hard to sleep at night. You hear a car coming.
And you have kids. As we've been hearing through the whole interview, you have little ones in there. That had to be very disconcerting.
And I'm sorry about that in the background.
Oh,
I'm supposed to be quiet.
It's fine. It's fine. They're kids. Let them be kids.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. So just for context, it's that's what you're hearing in the background there is little ones getting rambunctious and being kids and having fun. No worries at all. Well, catch us up now. Where are you in this process? They've asked for injunctive relief. They've asked for a litany of things, not the least of which, as I said, is returning of the documents with no. I'm trying to understand how that's even how are you going to prove that? Okay, here's the email link back that you gave us, and here's a jump drive with all the documents. Or are they going to ask you to put all those documents back onto the Dropbox folder that they came from, that I'm supposing is still there, and send them an email confirming that you've put them up? Like, how are you supposed to do that? Then you're supposed to provide a list of all the people that you may have given these to. What other things are they asking, and where are you with this? Are you going to roll over and comply and do what they have to say? Speak to us about this legal process and where you are without. I mean, of course, I know, and I'm sure your attorneys, and I've been in contact with your firm as well. I understand that there are a lot of limitations as to what you can and cannot say, but tell us what you can say comfortably and legally here without getting into any kind of trouble, where we are in this process, please.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I don't even know what they're considering needed to be redacted. So they haven't given, what is this redaction? Where's the redaction log? They haven't been very clear other than just give this back. And again,
it says give us back everything we gave you. I mean, I'm summarizing, but and tell us who you might have given it to. That's what that's what it's boiling down to.
Right. So, there isn't a whole lot of clarity. It just seems as if there's just been, a lot of hostility, basically, because why these documents too, when Callie has been on the receiving end of other documents, and they've never behaved this way before about them. She has also, I have been on the receiving end, and I've notified them of documents. And they've never behaved this way before. So what is it about these documents that creates such hostile actions by them towards us?
So where are we in this process? Currently you do have a bit of a gag order on you. I mean, you are speaking about it, but you have an order to not share these documents anymore. So they've been pulled down from the internet, yes?
I mean, if Callie does not have them on her site.
Correct. Right. They were pulled down. You two were named in the lawsuit, and that they've been pulled down. So where does this go from here? I mean, what's the time frame? Can we expect the judge's decision? Is it just going to sit? I mean, is it just going to sit in limbo? I mean, what's your counsel telling you? Where does this go from here?
We do have a hearing coming up on the 22nd, I believe.
Of October?
So I guess we'll have more answers then. October 22nd. We'll have some more answers then about what's going on.
Now, is that going to be seen? What court is that seen in? Is this a district judge that's going to be looking at this?
Fairfax.
Is it local?
Yes, a Fairfax Circuit Court, I believe.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where they come down on this. My goodness. Wow.
I mean, but, I don't know all the legal information.
Of course,
but
that's why you have lawyers. Right.
Exactly. But there is case law where Pentagon papers were, illegally obtained. Our papers were not illegally obtained. They were obtained legally.
Right. It's not like you're a whistleblower here. Exactly. They gave you the information and then went, whoops, holy crap, we shouldn't have given them all this. Can we get that back, please?
And
that's
why are they behaving
summary,
like
right?
This?
Huh?
Right? Why are they behaving like this? Again, our rights, they're just picking and choosing what rights we can have. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're delegating through their own, today, maybe we'll let the parents assemble, but we might not let them, speak at the meeting. It's becoming their own picking and choosing of what we can do.
Are you feeling, and of course, we're not legal analysts here, neither of us are lawyers, but are you feeling that that this whole thing is akin to the attempts by the DOJ to create this chilling effect? Do you think perhaps they want to throw you under the bus here as an example to other parents that might be thinking of daring to file a FOIA request? Because the headlines, FCPS, one of the largest school districts in the nation, sues local moms. There's got to be other parents that are sitting back going, oh, crap, man. Right?
Again, it speaks to their level of desperation to quiet us. Why do they want us quiet? It's because we've lifted the rock. We've seen what's under there and what's going on, and we're questioning it. Their own internal audit documents that are on board docs. Parents are savvy now. They're knowing where they can go and look for information. They're seeking that information because they're concerned about their children. We have that right in Virginia. We have a right to a say in our children's education. And so for the sheer fact that Fairfax County Public Schools is trying to silence us on it, that speaks volumes. Their actions, like I said, it speaks to that desperate level to silence us. And I don't think it's going to work. I don't think that people are feeling intimidated by their actions. Is it concerning? Yes. But it's concerning at a higher level that this is the United States of America. And this is what our school board is doing to parents with the tax funds that we are working hard to try, and give to them, right? Even through the COVID, pandemic. And we were, myself here in my own home paying for services for our child, right? And then having to go pay the taxes then. So it's like double the amount of money. We have to pay the taxes and pay for the services that our children are supposed to be receiving. And so that's problematic. And again, that goes back to their own internal audit on the fidelity of implementation, where their own auditor general found them to have a significant difficulty in, having any type of centralized organization to tracking those motions and resolutions and policies and the funding that are attached to them and whether or not they're actually effective. So it's not us to blame here. We're just questioning as to why don't you have that going on?
And really, and frankly, as you've pointed out several times, all you're doing is exercising your rights and, dare I say, responsibilities as a citizen in a free democratic republic operating under law to question and to file grievances with your elected officials. I mean, that seems to be pretty straightforward. So, Debra Tisler, I want to thank you for what you're doing, for raising this awareness, for standing strong. And here's what I want you to do. Let's take us out here, and I want you to look into the camera, and anybody that is watching this that may be sitting on the fence as to whether they're going to get in this fight and stand up and speak out on the issues that really matter to them and have their voice heard. I want you to send them a message today, if you would, please.
Stand up for yourself, stay strong. Know that your rights are yours. That's what our country is founded on here. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We've lost so many lives and so much bloodshed to protect that freedom. So stay true to that and know that you're not alone. And if you do end up in this battle, the community will support you. This cannot go on anymore. It has to be stopped.
Well said. Debra Tisler, God bless you. Thank you for coming on the show, sharing your story, and we will be anxiously following this. And if you have any updates that you ever want to give, you're more than welcome to come on and utilize this platform to share what you know with the world. Thanks for coming on NovaNow.tv.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. And
You too.
there you have it, folks. Again, wow. Nova's way bigger than Fairfax County and way bigger than Loudoun County. But geez, I got my hands full just covering everything that's happening here. It happens like an avalanche on a weekly basis. There's always something, always something. So there you have it. Another episode of Nova Now in the digital bag, as they say. Special thanks to Debra Tisler and her counsel at the Goldwater Institute, who walked me through getting prepared for this very sticky situation and giving us this opportunity to share what we were able to share with you, to educate you, to enlighten you, and hopefully to inspire you to exercise your rights as a free citizen of this greatest country the world has ever known. From the Republic of Virginia, Northern Virginia, Fairfax County. My name is Sam Otero. You've been watching NovaNow.tv, and I am out. Peace.